Since Greg passed away, you'll be moving back with your parents, right? We'll be taking over this house. My beloved husband, Greg, had suddenly passed away. Right after the funeral, as I was grieving, Greg's parents, Reynold and Melissa, came to visit me. Although not many, this house is filled with memories of living with him. Why do I have to be the one to leave? However, to me, who was in no state to handle this, my Melissa ruthlessly declared those words. My name is Kathleen. I work as a clerk at a real estate agency. My encounter with Greg, who would become my precious husband, was through the real estate agency where I work. He was the real brother of my colleague, Bro, and the two were extremely close. Since their workplaces were nearby, Bro often stopped by. As I also worked as a clerk, I became close with my colleague who would later become my husband. That's how I was introduced to his real brother. Eventually, I started spending more time with the brothers, such as going out for lunch together when they invited me. I thought he was a nice guy who was easy to talk to and had a bright personality, but I didn't really think of him as a potential romantic partner. I assumed he felt the same way, but then one day, something happened that triggered a change in our relationship. Bro had made a reservation at a restaurant for us to meet up, but he suddenly had an urgent matter and couldn't make it. However, it seemed like a waste to cancel the reservation. So, for the first time, Greg and I had the opportunity to be alone together. I found out later that the Bro brothers had planned this together, and David had arranged for us to be alone at Bro's request. The food was delicious, and our conversation flowed easily. We quickly became intimate, sharing our upbringings and values. The more I got to know his inner self, the more I was drawn to his warm smile. From that day on, our relationship changed. And it didn't take long for us to get married. It probably wouldn't have happened without David's thoughtfulness. In that sense, I couldn't be more grateful to him for the events that were about to unfold. And then the day came to meet my PIL. Despite my anxiety, they welcomed me very warmly. The conversation continued with compassion, and my nervousness melted away. We're so happy you're here. We've been looking forward to meeting you, Kathleen. I've cooked up a storm hoping today would be a wonderful day, Melissa said, fussing over me. My PIL, like their eldest son Greg, were very independent and approachable people. I was relieved and filled with gratitude for the enjoyable time I had spent at my in-laws' home. Even after several interactions, my in-laws continued to support our happiness while maintaining a comfortable distance, never pressuring us about marriage or children. Eventually, the topic of living together with my in-laws came up, but we had plans to build our own home. Actually, my grandfather left me a house. I explained, and my in-laws listened intently and nodded. To my grandfather, I was his only granddaughter, and he doted on me immensely. He even left me a magnificent house with land, perfectly renovated down to the interior. It was as if my grandfather had waited for the inheritance process to be completed before passing away. The land was set to undergo redevelopment soon, and due to its prime location, the property value had skyrocketed. However, with my long experience in the real estate industry, I understood that boldly selling the property would be more beneficial for our dream home plans than living there ourselves. I was grateful for my grandfather's love, but he had told us that we could either live in or sell the inherited house, so we were already considering selling it. After getting married, we moved into that house. However, even with its excellent location, it was difficult to continue living there due to the distance from our workplaces. As we were moving forward with the plan to sell the house, one day, a significant change came to our lives. Craig, who worked in sales, was ordered to transfer. His company was a large corporation with branches all across the United States. Even though we were newlyweds, He was told that he was the only suitable candidate, and since it was an official order, he couldn't refuse. I'll make sure to come back every holiday. Also, my parents said they'll come visit. I don't want you to overdo it, but could you take them out and show them around? Reynold and Melissa are really nice people, so going out with them won't be a problem. But it looks like it'll be a while before we can let go of the house. Considering my job as well, it was decided that he would go on a solo assignment. It was sudden, but I had to suppress my loneliness and worries and wait for the day we could live together again. Just as Greg had said, during the holidays, my in-laws, especially Melissa, frequently came to visit. She shared that she too had endured loneliness many times in the past when Reynold had to go on business trips, while she took care of their young children. Even without children, you can nurture family memories. Let's go out together. Going shopping will lift your spirits. Come on, Kathleen. Thanks to her, I didn't feel lonely and instead had busy holidays. However, little by little, things started to bother me. On my days off from work, Melissa would almost always invite me to go out. That was fine, but after a month, her invitations became somewhat forceful, and she seemed to disregard my fatigue and housework. If I said, "I want to rest this week," she would furrow her brows as if I were being selfish. But going out together is fun, isn't it? Or are you saying you don't like going out with me? That's not it. But since you take me out every week, don't you need some rest too? Melissa looked sad. Even when I hurriedly tried to clear up the misunderstanding, she wouldn't listen at all. Although I was perplexed, when I agreed, she showed a smile and acted as if she had forgotten how she had persistently pressured me. My doubts about her words and actions gradually grew stronger. The places she forcibly invited me to were all shops where high expenses piled up. Shopping at brand stores and expensive meals continued, and she manipulated the situation so that I would bear the costs. She would often leave the store first, leaving me behind with no choice but to pay. There was never any gratitude for the payments, nor did she ever pay me back later. Certainly, I had savings since I owned a home and received a sufficient salary. However, my husband and I had always been mindful of restraint, so I couldn't help but feel uncomfortable with Melissa's extravagant behavior. Sometimes both of my in-laws would be there, but it was the same in those cases too. Rather, with my FIL Reynold joining in, my burden only became heavier. I knew I needed to resolve this, but I couldn't bring myself to talk to Greg about it. He had said, "I'll definitely come back during the holidays." But the sales office where he was assigned was quite busy, and he couldn't come back easily. "Mom told me you've been going out every week. Are you managing okay? You don't seem worried?" That's right. When I saw Greg's face on our video call, I noticed the dark circles under his eyes and his slightly sunken cheeks. I could tell he was still tired from work. Feeling guilty about bringing up the issue with Melissa, I found myself putting on a brave face. "Melissa has been really good to me. Greg, please take care of yourself too. I'm fine. So, don't worry." While making excuses to Greg, I couldn't refuse to pay for the outings with my in-laws. However, their attitude gradually escalated, and finally, when I insisted, "I can't go out today," they said something like this. Then, "Hey, can't you lend me some money?" "What? You want me to pay?" "Just a little bit, really just a small amount. I already made a reservation at the restaurant. I'll take some other friends instead, so can you cover the amount I don't have on me?" I wanted to refuse, but if I did, the situation would become complicated and unmanageable. Resigned to the fact that I had no choice but to pay, I opened my wallet. However, I never showed this kind of attitude in front of Greg. When I subtly probed Melissa, saying, Why don't you try asking Greg? I was surprised when she replied, asking him would be shameful. She thought it was embarrassing to ask her eldest son, so she figured she could just ask his wife instead. I had long given up on her, and it had become a daily occurrence for her to demand money from me. At the very least, if I gave her money under the guise of an allowance, Melissa would stop forcibly dragging me out. I knew it had developed into a big problem. However, I was exhausted from the inability to have a proper dialogue with her. Her behavior became increasingly incomprehensible and bizarre. Just when I thought she had suddenly shown up without prior notice, she would look around the inside and outside of the house as if licking it, making me feel like my home's privacy was being violated. I wonder if these furnishings are what Kathleen's grandpa left behind. It's amazing that you have the means to have such high-end items. Some of the furniture included antiques that my grandfather had been fond of. She seemed to like them, barging in to admire them and enjoying them as if they were her own. This is my and Greg's home. I finally started considering confiding in Greg about Melissa's words and actions. Greg might be surprised, but how great would it be if we could think together about how to deal with her? Her behavior was never pleasant. No matter how much of an in-law relationship we had, it was an act of invading privacy. However, at the same time, the duration of Greg's solo assignment was determined. If I could just endure a little longer, he would come back, and if Greg were here, my in-laws would stop demanding money too. A little hope sprouted in my heart. Greg was working hard every day, so my patience would only be a little longer. That's how I was eagerly awaiting my reunion with Greg, but the situation took an unexpected turn. What? Greg collapsed and is in the hospital? My mind went blank. The person who contacted me was a colleague from his assignment location, and I hurriedly headed to the hospital. Perhaps due to the heavy workload, he had suddenly suffered a heart attack. He was transported by ambulance, but it was too late. Kind Greg, whose strong point was his health, passed away in an instant from an attack that no one could have anticipated. I faced the funeral without even being able to accept reality. I don't remember much due to the strong sense of loss. David rushed over and took care of most of the miscellaneous matters for me. I'm sorry. You just lost bro too, and you're helping me so much. It's only natural for me to help with bro's funeral. More importantly, is everything okay with the land? Are the preparations for the house complete? Around the end of the funeral, David and I talked extensively while cleaning up. I nodded to that and answered, "Perfect." And a few days after Greg's funeral, my PAL came to visit the house together. However, it was glaringly obvious that they hadn't come to console me. Although it was sudden and unfortunate about our son, you'll be fine because we're here. Don't worry. For some reason, her face was smiling in an eerie way. Even more astonishingly, she had arranged for a truck, and it was packed full of luggage like furniture from my in-laws' home. I was so surprised and confused that I couldn't even speak. No matter how you looked at it, this was a move-in. Melissa and the others were trying to move in without any consultation. What was making them do this? But the answer was clear. Could it be that you're after our land? I put into words the concern that had been in my heart all along, even as I was confused. She showed a cold smile. The property value has skyrocketed quite a bit. I've had my eye on this house for a long time. I mean, the only reason you were able to marry my son was because of this inheritance, right? I allowed the marriage because you were the one who inherited it. Filled with despair, I lost my words. You mean you and Melissa are going to live with me? What? What kind of stupid thing are you saying? When I asked that while still confused, she raised her eyebrows. Greg's death was an unexpected event, but Actually, even if it hadn't been, Melissa had planned to get her hands on this house. My in-laws were trying to kick me out and take over this property. And they seemed to have assumed on their own that I would leave this house. Since our son died too, you'll be going back to your parents' place, right? This house will be sad if it's empty, so we'll live in it for you. That's why I'm telling you not to worry. Her face changed into a distorted, eerie smile. Even as I felt fear, I pointed out her mistake. But this house has already been sold. I held back from laughing at Melissa's misunderstanding, but I couldn't hide my half-smiling expression. In contrast, Melissa froze, saying, "What?" Just then, a moving company truck from a completely different company arrived. "Excuse me, I'm here for a delivery to your home." Perhaps because a truck from a competing company was parked there, a burly mover got out and called out to us to confirm. The movers she had arranged also got out. They probably realized something was off since they couldn't start working and a different truck had arrived. They sought an explanation from my in-laws, but the two of them were flustered and incoherent. There was no point in all of us arguing like this. Seeing my flustered in-laws, I finally began to regain my composure. After that, I gave precise instructions to have the trucks moved. This house already has a buyer, and the contract has been finalized. A new family is moving in, so we can't bring these people's belongings into someone else's home, right? As the movers were also shocked, a luxury car arrived just then. A wealthy-looking couple and their children got out. In fact, this property was no longer mine. They were the new owners. My in-laws became even more confused, seemingly unable to understand what was happening. "Please move the trucks quickly. The new residents can't start their work." Somehow, I managed to get the trucks on Melissa's side to leave, and the movers immediately got to work, carrying brand new furniture in the planned order. Melissa and the others couldn't accept it and started persistently pestering me at the front door. The husband, who was the buyer, had his family take refuge in the car and rushed over here, demanding an explanation, starting yet another commotion. "Who are you people?" "My family bought this place." "Have the trucks leave quickly too." I never thought my in-laws would come, so I apologized profusely and somehow got them to calm down. But Melissa and the others wouldn't leave. They actually pushed past us and charged into the house. However, naturally, the inside of the house had also completely changed from what the two of them knew. None of the furniture my husband and I had used remained. Melissa was shocked by the sight and started making a scene, going crazy. "What is this? The house is empty. That antique furniture and lighting, they were my favorites. What's going on?" She was outraged, unable to understand what was happening. When the residents finally shouted, "We're calling the police!" Reynolds, who had been in a panic, ran as if jolted and dragged Melissa away to retreat. Once they were a little away from the scene, even the heated-up Melissa became somewhat dazed and quiet. For the time being, I prioritized apologizing to the residents. They said there was no guarantee that problems wouldn't arise in the future, and by taking down my in-laws' names and addresses, I was somehow released. Although I was feeling intense fatigue, I still had to explain to my in-laws. I returned to the two of them and calmly informed them that the move had been completed a few days before Greg's passing. "This house was originally planned to be sold along with the land, so it's according to the initial plan." Greg's solo assignment had put a stop to it once, but there was a certain background to why things could progress so smoothly. The one who supported our decision was David. I was perplexed by the change in my in-laws, who had even started asking for money, but I couldn't confide in Greg because I didn't want him to worry, so I continued to spend my days feeling down. David was the one who noticed and saved me. He said he didn't get along well with my in-laws' home and offered to help if I had any troubles. Not wanting to ruin my relationship with my husband or my in-laws, I trusted David, who promised not to tell anyone, and decided to consult him about everything. Upon hearing my story, he became furious with my in-laws. As Greg's younger brother and my colleague, he understood my in-laws' schemes well. And for David, his bro Greg was his only family. He said that I, as Greg's wife, was like family too. I think our parents will eventually try to live together in that house or conveniently kick you two out and make it their own. According to David, both of my in-laws had high-class thinking to the point of being ignorant of the world. They were pretentious and didn't hesitate to use any means necessary. Especially Melissa, who was terribly selfish. While she pretended to be a lovely lady when she was keeping up appearances, she was actually a nasty person who only thought about her own convenience. Because they were blood-related family, the episodes about my in-laws that David shared were all intense. Since they put on a front in front of their eldest son, who was the successor, Greg probably never had to see this side of his parents. Anyway, when it was suggested that I should sell the land early to avoid having it taken by my in-laws, I agreed with David's opinion and decided to proceed with the sale. No matter how precious it was, having been left by my dear grandfather, I wanted to avoid this house becoming an obstacle for my husband and me. Rather, it was because it was precious that I didn't want to leave any roots of trouble. Of course, I didn't decide on my own. I discussed it with Greg while he was still alive and got his consent. At that time, he learned about all of his parents' actions. I really didn't want to tell him, but I couldn't complete the sale all by myself. However, he properly understood my feelings of not being able to consult him, and on top of that, he declared that he couldn't forgive his parents' actions. I'm sorry I didn't notice. If it's okay with you, Kathleen, let's complete the sale before my parents make a move. I'm sorry, even though it's the precious house you inherited from Grandpa. No, he would agree that we should let it go if it's going to cause trouble. I decided to sell the land to protect my future with Greg, not my relationship with my in-laws. Regarding the sale, David, who was a real estate expert, did his best to find the most suitable buyer. What I had to do was find a new place to move to as soon as possible and act naturally so my in-laws wouldn't notice. Since we had been living in the house, it had some signs of use but was as good as new, and we kept the price down accordingly. Then, we were able to find a buyer right away, and the sale went smoothly. That was the family that arrived earlier. I had actually planned to wait for his return in our new home that we moved to. Greg was also happy about the sale, so that's the only thing I regret. The movers start bringing in the furniture. Disregarding my expelled in-laws, the moving work steadily progressed. My in-laws didn't make a fuss and just watched in a daze, but they couldn't stay like that forever. The moving company that my in-laws had hired came demanding an explanation, looking angry. From the company's perspective, there was an incomprehensible deficiency causing a booking issue with the move. They pressed my in-laws, saying, "I can't believe something like this happened. And this is a breach of contract." But my in-laws were vague and couldn't explain well. In the end, it was decided that the household goods would be taken back for the time being, but due to the unexpected situation, it seemed that a substantial surcharge would be billed. Perhaps finally understanding the series of events, Melissa clung to me, trembling. "Since this is the house of my son's wife, it's our house. Right? This is strange, isn't it?" She lined up desperate excuses, trying to somehow persuade me, but I ignored them and left with just my carry-on luggage. The land already belonged to the new family and wasn't even mine anymore, so there was nothing I needed to answer for. Things went smoothly even after Greg's funeral. I did come face to face with my in-laws, and they seemed to want to say something to me about the house, but in the end, they couldn't say it and hid before leaving. I no longer had any obligation to fulfill toward my in-laws either, so since I had no business with them, I hardly spoke to them at all. I spent my days peacefully without incident. In the new house. In the small house where my husband and I were supposed to restart, I faced the sadness of losing Greg. I had a large amount of savings from the sale, but now that Greg was gone, the plan to build our own home had vanished. As I returned to work, I immersed myself in the few memories I had with Greg and took a fresh look at myself to gradually become more positive. On the other hand, my in-laws, especially Melissa, must have had a frustrating sense of dissatisfaction building up. I didn't want to be involved with them anymore, so I didn't even let them know the location of my new residence. Unable to interact with me, that seemed to further increase Melissa's dissatisfaction. She had been putting on airs for her eldest son, and she couldn't go to David, with whom she had a bad relationship, at this point. However, the stress of not knowing my whereabouts kept piling up, and eventually, Melissa lost her balance. One late night, she committed the vicious act of spilling gasoline around the sold house. Fortunately, a passing neighbor found it suspicious and immediately restrained her, avoiding any incidents. When the police were notified, it was discovered that she had also prepared old papers and lighters, and she was arrested on suspicion of attempted arson. The husband, who had almost been set on fire, became furious when he realized the culprit was the woman who had barged in on moving day, and he contacted me too, saying he would definitely press charges. I apologized many times, but that was an apology for the terrifying experience of almost being set on fire, and there was nothing I could do about her attempted arson. In the end, Melissa, who was fixated on the house, couldn't avoid being charged. I also apologized repeatedly and somehow gained forgiveness, promising that such a thing would never happen again. She had grown up spoiled, not knowing poverty, and she could get anything she wanted. That's probably why she felt irritated when things didn't go her way, wanting that house, and a distorted jealousy sprouted within her. She grew to resent the house and land, turned to crime, and in the end, she ended up in prison. Reynolds, who was supposed to be her support, had endless fights with Melissa after her arrest, abandoned her, and forcibly finalized their divorce. So even after serving her sentence, her home to return to was completely lost. However, that could be said to be the result of the actions she chose. David was lonely after losing his bro, but he encouraged me, saying, "I can endure it because I have my Sael." My ties with my in-laws were safely cut, but I hadn't lost all my family. I decided in my heart to spend my days peacefully, for the sake of Greg, who was watching over me from heaven. Late at night on a snowy road, my young granddaughter Harper came to our house, carrying an unfamiliar baby on her small back. What on earth was going on? Lost for words. Dad said to go borrow hospital money, Harper told me in a faint voice. In response, "That's impossible," my husband Thomas exclaimed. Ignoring my surprise at his harsh words, Thomas took astonishing action. "My name is Madison. Recently, the stairs have become a real challenge for me, a 63-year-old. Thomas, 65, just retired from work. We talk about wanting to do various things now that it's just the two of us. For starters, to fend off declining strength, I'm thinking of walking every day. Fortunately, we're in a bit of the countryside here, with few cars and people, and the air is fresh. It's the perfect place for a walk. I thought retirement life might be lonely, but it's not really. That's because my daughter Lily's family lives nearby. Lily is 35 and a mom to one child. My granddaughter Harper, just turned into a first grader at 6 years old, is absolutely adorable. Lily's husband Daniel is a bit gruff and seems to avoid our place. But, well, if the family relationship is good, I try not to mind. Lily and her husband have Lily as the breadwinner working hard, with Daniel being a house husband. I'm proud of my daughter, but I worry it might be too much for her. If it were Lily as the housewife, I'd want to help in any way I can, but with Daniel, it's not so easy. Too much meddling might be seen as annoying. And yet, doing nothing and just leaving them be makes me feel uneasy about the right distance. Then, one day, something unsettling happened. Returning from shopping, I found Harper in front of the house unexpectedly. It's not too far for a child to walk from Lily's home to ours, but it's a fair distance. Moreover, Harper was carrying her school backpack. Wearing a backpack too big for her small first-grade self, Harper had come over after school. And it was on a hot day just before the summer break. "Well, Harper, what's wrong?" "Dad said I couldn't go into the house, so I came here." "What?" Confused about what was going on, but seeing Harper's pale face, I quickly let her inside to cool down. Thomas had gone out when I went shopping, so no one was home. I wonder how long she had been here. Harper drank the cold juice I offered her in one go. "Mom is at work, but why did Dad say you couldn't go inside?" "I don't know, but he said it's because he's busy." "Huh? Too busy to let her into her own house?" That's absurd. And to lock her out in such scorching heat. Anger welled up inside me. "Once you're feeling better, let's go back together with Grandma. I'll talk to Dad." I've been holding back because he's my daughter's husband, but this is simply unacceptable. This is something that can't be kept silent. Harper nodded, and as we headed home, the front door suddenly opened before we could ring the doorbell. "Bye then," said a strange woman, waving as she left. Who was that? Surprised by the sudden event, Harper and I watched the woman walk away. Rushing into the entrance, I found Daniel with a shocked expression. "Daniel, you locked Harper out, and then what? You had a woman over while Lily was away?" Furious at me, Daniel frowned. "What?" And he grumpily responded. "Don't just come here and start accusing me of nonsense. That was just a sales lady. I told her we didn't need a water purifier, but she was persistent, so I was just getting rid of her." "A sales lady?" "Yes," said Daniel, turning his back. "Then why lock Harper out because you were busy?" "Oh, I was in the middle of something I couldn't step away from. Lily asked me to fix a shelf, but it was bad timing, and I was tied up." "Hey, Harper," said Daniel, calling Harper over. Harper trembled. "Kid, I told you to wait, didn't I? Why didn't you wait instead of going over there?" "I did wait, but it was too hot, and you never let me in." "If I said wait, you should wait. Don't make things difficult. Hey!" I couldn't stay silent, seeing Harper scared by the harsh words. "But don't start with me, Madison. I'm the one raising Harper. I'd appreciate it if you didn't interfere with how we raise our child." He glared at me. Indeed, as a grandmother, I remembered not wanting outsiders to meddle in my parenting. Being told not to interfere by someone with parenting experience left me speechless. "Thank you, Grandma," said Harper, waving goodbye, which made me feel melancholy. My concerns about whether everything was truly okay proved correct. Similar incidents happened repeatedly afterward. I couldn't stay silent and contacted Lily, but Daniel takes care of the house, allowing me to focus on my work. We couldn't live without my job, so I'm grateful to Daniel. I trust him with child rearing, so please don't interfere." She scolded me in response. Taking a leap, I mentioned the woman leaving their house. Why worry? It must have been a salesperson. They target the countryside thinking there are more elderly people around here. They're persistent even though we've said no multiple times. She seemed unconcerned. Yet, a noticeable change occurred in Lily's home. As summer break began, Harper's visits to our house became more frequent. Dad says to stay outside, or he'll skip meals for me. What? It seems that when Lily was away on business trips, Daniel would lock Harper out. It's not feasible to spend every day at a friend's house during summer break. Nor is it realistic to kill time in the park due to the excessive heat. No lunch and no dinner if she disobeys. That's too cruel. I couldn't help but exclaim in anger. I can't stand it anymore. Grandma will talk to Dad and Mom for you. I clenched my fist, ready to lecture them. Please don't. Harper quickly intervened. If you do that, Dad will get in a bad mood again. And Mom is busy with work. It'll just cause more trouble. Could this really be the words of a first grader? To worry so much about their parents' feelings at such an age. It's heartbreaking. I decided to have a serious talk with Lily. But when I tried calling, she was too busy to speak. What to do? As summer ended and autumn passed, the cold season arrived swiftly. I wonder how they're doing. Staring out at the falling snow from inside my house, I muttered to myself. Harper, now 7, had suddenly stopped coming by. Their absence was worrying in its own way. And there was no way to contact Lily at all. Even if they thought it a nuisance, perhaps I should visit their house. With that thought, I gazed aimlessly outside. What? Surprised by what I saw, I hurriedly dashed outside. What's going on? Thomas's puzzled voice went unheard as I forgot to even put on my coat and rushed out. Harper? There stood Harper, in front of the house. Despite the snow brightening the night, it was nearly midnight, about to change dates. No time for a school-aged child to roam. Yet there he stood, shivering in the cold, even with a coat. Could he have walked from their house in this snow? Even in the countryside, it's not like cars never pass by. The thought of slipping on the snowy road was terrifying. What are you doing here at this hour? No, never mind that. Come inside quickly. I reached for Harper's hand, but he shook their head. Harper? I need money. Huh? Please lend me some money. What? At that unexpected request, I was shocked. Then, from his back, the sound of a baby crying. What? Surprise after surprise left me nearly speechless. Hastily checking, I saw a baby, bundled up against the cold, being carried on Harper's back. Wait, a baby? What? Why? I hadn't heard anything about Lily being pregnant. If the baby was being carried, it meant they were at least 4 months old, having grown enough to support their head. But for those 4 months, and even before, there was no sign of Lily being pregnant or giving birth. What's going on? I yelled, forgetting we were outside in the middle of the night. What are you doing? Get inside now. Thomas had come out to see what was happening and scolded us, snapping me out of my panic. Quickly, I brought him and the baby inside. In the warm room, I gave him something warm to drink and made sure the baby wasn't cold. Initially, I need to get back quickly, or Dad will, he said, but after drinking warm milk and feeling the warmth, finally showed a relieved expression. What happened? Tears quickly filled and spilled from his eyes. Dad said we don't have any money, so he told me to borrow some hospital money from Grandma and Grandpa. What do you mean? Hospital money? The baby seems to have a fever. What? Touching the baby's forehead, it was indeed slightly warm. But being a baby, their body temperature is higher, so it's hard to tell for sure. You know, this child is Dad's.
Then, Lily's?
No, not Mom's child.
What?
I was utterly confused by the situation. Confused, Harper spoke with a downcast expression. Mom has been coming home late because of important work lately. She's been on a business trip since yesterday, so I'm on my own.
I see.
Then today, this lady brought over the baby. She's an important client of Dad's, and he told me to take care of the baby because he's busy. He said it's his child, so take good care of it. This was supposed to be a secret. I'm sorry, I'll get scolded if it's found out I told you it's Dad's child. Exhausted from shouting, I let out a defeated sigh. What is going on? So, I told Dad the baby seemed in pain, and he and the lady said to take the baby to the hospital. They're too busy, and they don't have the money, so they told me to borrow it from you.
Were you kicked out after saying that?
Yeah.
Daniel is the worst.
I couldn't help but shout. Grandma ended up shouting for Harper.
Calm down.
Thomas scolded me. Then, Harper turned to Thomas, my husband, and Harper's grandfather. Harper finds the usually taciturn Thomas a bit intimidating. Well, he does seem grumpy all the time. But Harper, trying their best, hesitantly asked Thomas, Grandpa, please, can you lend us the money for the baby's hospital bill? Tears welling up in their eyes. Thomas, can't you make a kinder face, I thought, but then.
That's impossible.
He barked. Why speak in such a manner? Unable to hold back any longer, Harper burst into tears. Yet, the baby looks in pain, please. She bravely continued. At this point, it doesn't matter whose child the baby is. Just as I was about to say something to Thomas, thinking we couldn't abandon Harper and the baby.
Call a taxi.
Thomas spoke up before I could.
What? Don't dawdle, do it now.
Yes. I hurriedly called a taxi, and following Thomas's instructions, I took them to the pediatric emergency department.
I won't lend money, but you, a child, don't need to go to the hospital. An old hand at child rearing like your grandma will take you, so rest assured. And I'm going to prepare a bath now, Harper. You go warm up in the bath, got it?
Thomas declared with an authoritative tone. Both Harper and I could only nod in agreement. Upon arrival at the hospital, the baby was seen immediately. The doctor suggested the fever might be due to the cold. We were advised to keep the baby calm and received some medicine for the baby. Since the baby's identity was unknown, we couldn't use health insurance. The doctor was also surprised. We ended up paying a considerable amount. Normally, the cost for a baby's medical consultation and medication would be very low in this area. Is that moron Daniel saying he doesn't even have that? I'll make him pay later. My anger grew even more. By the time we got home, it was already past midnight, and Harper, who had been waiting up with Thomas, had fallen asleep. When I returned with the baby, Harper woke up in a panic. How's the baby? She asked. Worrying about others even in such a situation, what a kind child. I couldn't help but tear up. So, Thomas, instead of looking so grumpy, show a smile and reassure them. But, surprisingly, Harper hugged the serious-faced Thomas. Looking on in astonishment, I saw Harper smiling.
Grandpa, the baby's okay. That's good, right? You were worried. Fool, why would I worry about someone else's baby? But you were worried. You kept asking if I was cold or hungry, or if you should read me a storybook. You cared a lot. There's no such person like me.
Harper innocently reported Thomas's behavior. "Oh, that was you," I said, laughing, which made Thomas look even grumpier, though his cheeks relaxed. The next day, Thomas acted before I could. He first called Lily.
"What, Dad? I'm busy at work right now. Come home right now. You idiot!"
He shouted and hung up the phone. Then he made another call. "What is it, Thomas? Did Harper go to your place okay? How's the baby?" Daniel answered, sounding groggy. To think he could sleep peacefully after sending 2 young children out into the heavy snow in the middle of the night.
"Get over here right now, you idiot!"
He shouted again before hanging up. Right before that, he yelled one more thing.
"Bring the woman you're with right now too. Or be prepared for what's coming."
Such intensity. I could imagine Daniel turning pale on the other end of the phone. A few hours later, Lily returned from her business trip, wondering what had happened. Daniel arrived almost at the same time as Lily, along with another woman. The 3 of them sat in front of Thomas, who stood with his arms crossed. The woman with Daniel seemed familiar.
"Ah, the sales lady from before."
Yes, she was the woman who had left the house when Harper was locked out during the summer. "Ah, I think I understand what's going on now." Lily, looking uncomfortable, lifted her face. Dad, what's all this?"
"Shut your mouth."
Yes. Lily knew when Thomas was angry, he was really angry. And straightened up at his word. Why am I here?" Daniel, still unfamiliar with how intimidating Thomas could be, asked reluctantly. So, Thomas crouched down.
"Ah?"
And gave a glare that made Daniel say, "No, nothing." Daniel, you shouldn't underestimate Thomas's intensity.
"Well, here's a thick envelope,"
Thomas said, pulling out an envelope. Inside were 4-sized documents.
"The results of an investigation into Daniel's background." "What?"
The shock was voiced by everyone but Thomas. Of course, I was surprised too. When did you arrange for something like this?
"When Harper was locked out in the middle of summer, and you said you saw the sales lady. And you appear in it, huh? Hernandez? What?"
At that, the woman let out a strange noise.
"Well, it's obvious, isn't it? You're not a sales lady but Daniel's mistress, right?" "What?"
Lily was the one surprised by Thomas's words. Did she really believe this woman was just a sales lady? Too naive. Daniel and the woman named Hernandez looked awkward.
"Daniel's living the life, huh? Letting Lily work while he enjoys days of affairs at home. Kicking Harper out and doing who knows what." "What are you talking about?"
The moment Daniel tried to play dumb, Thomas hit the floor. The floor cracked, and Daniel flinched.
"Oops, my bad. Thought I saw a bug,"
Thomas said, blowing on his fist. But seriously, Thomas, fix the floor later.
"Sorry, didn't catch that. So, the woman beside you is your mistress, right? That is, right?"
Thomas glared at Daniel with a menacing look.
"Yes, she's my mistress."
Daniel turned away, sweating profusely.
"Huh? You've been making me work while you cheat? Talking about protecting the home and child, and you've protected nothing."
Lily stood up in shock and anger.
"Sit down for now."
Yes. But at Thomas's command, Lily sat down promptly.
"Hernandez, you're married too, right?" "What?"
The woman looked up in surprise, at the same time. "Huh?" was Daniel's reaction.
"You said you were single, didn't you? Was that a lie? I was planning to divorce." "So, you're not divorced yet?" Ridiculous. Don't you dare act all high and mighty when you have a wife and child yourself.
What a mess. A woman who knew she was dealing with a married man, and a man cheating despite having a family. Just a typical argument between scumbags.
Don't tell me the baby isn't mine but your husband's? That is. I knew it was weird. I made sure it couldn't happen.
The lowest of discussions was being had. The woman got angry at Daniel's anger.
Shut up. Whether I'm married or whose child it is, it's none of your business. It was just a relationship seeking thrills.
What did you say?
That's enough. We're breaking up. Lily, I'm returning your husband to you. He's no longer my problem.
What? Lily was confused by the sudden turn in the conversation. But then Thomas spoke solemnly.
As if it ends with no hard feelings, goodbye.
Indeed.
Lily, what about the compensation? Compensation? Oh, for the divorce? We have plenty of evidence. If you want to claim compensation from both of them, I'll support you. Yes. Of course I will.
Lily nodded energetically, finally understanding what she needed to do.
What do you mean?
Daniel, the only one not catching on, was told by Lily.
I'm divorcing you. We'll be claiming compensation from both of you, and I'll also demand child support from Daniel, so be prepared.
Huh?
Why? I'm breaking up with this woman. There's no need to divorce. The only option for me is to divorce someone who can't understand that.
No, wait a minute. I can't start working now.
I don't care. Just so you know, housework is a legitimate job, you fool.
It ended with Lily's sharp rebuke. So, Daniel and Hernandez hung their heads in shame. As things quieted down, Harper, who had been in another room, peeked out. Is the talk over? It's over. Come here to Mom, Harper. Lily, looking tired, reached out to Harper. Harper hurried over but didn't hug Mom, Lily. Instead, they bypassed her and hugged Thomas, who was standing to the side.
Grandpa, I'm hungry. Is that so? Well, then, let's have Grandpa make something. I want noodle. All right, I'll make some tasty one. Yay!
They cheerfully headed to the kitchen, leaving behind this mess. Lily stood, unsure what to do with her extended hand. On the floor.
It's not my fault. It's not my fault.
Daniel muttered. What will I do if my husband finds out? While Hernandez, also dazed. I chuckled bitterly, hearing the baby cry, and went to tend to the infant, leaving the three behind. Afterward, with the help of a lawyer Thomas knew, Lily successfully divorced. Naturally, Lily retained custody of Harper, and a lump sum for compensation and child support was agreed upon. Daniel clung to her until the end, saying, It's because you were busy with work that I felt lonely. But
you're the one who told me to work. Don't joke with me,
Lily retorted. Despite claiming to have no money, Daniel's parents apologized and paid on his behalf. They said they would make him repay them over a lifetime, but it's doubtful such a distraught man could work properly. As expected, Daniel became a recluse, eventually kicked out by his family, and went missing, a typical end for him. As for Hernandez, her affair was discovered by her husband, leading to divorce. The baby was taken in by her husband, which is probably better for the child. To think both partners would cheat while on a business trip, with a baby in tow. Daniel and Hernandez? They were truly despicable. As for Lily, after a stern lecture from Thomas, she reflected deeply. I'll face my child properly, she declared firmly, so the future should be okay. But being a single mother will be tough, so she decided to live with us. Supporting Harper's upbringing will become our responsibility until they're grown. While thinking about the challenges of child rearing, I was actually looking forward to it. Life needs some excitement, I thought, looking at Thomas playing Othello with Harper, his face slack with enjoyment. Thomas is always gruff with Lily and me, but this incident revealed his tender side towards Harper. Even after years of marriage, there are still new sides to discover in one's partner, I thought, watching him with a smile. My name is Luna. I was a 28-year-old who worked in a flower shop located in an office building, creating flower arrangements. My husband, Oliver, was 30, 2 years older than me, and worked as a hairstylist in the same building on the second floor. He was not exactly a celebrity stylist, but he was quite popular. We were celebrating our 3rd year of marriage that year. Apart from the fact that we had been unable to have children, I thought we were doing well as a happy couple. But it seemed I was the only one who thought that way. How did we first meet? Oliver used to frequently buy flowers for his salon from the flower shop on the 1st floor. Initially wary of Oliver, who was skilled in conversation due to his job, I gradually found it natural to have him by my side. How long was it after we started dating? Oliver invited me to dinner at his parents' house, saying he wanted to introduce me to his family. There, Oliver's brother and his fiancée were also present. I had heard about Oliver's struggles being compared to his excellent younger brother, but his brother was unpretentious and amiable, easy to talk to. Handsome, good-natured, and dependable, his brother had it all. Can't blame the parents for comparing, really. His fiancée, too, was beautiful and seemed quite talented. A stunningly attractive couple. Sitting opposite them, I couldn't help but wonder if I would be compared to his brother's bride-to-be if I married Oliver. During the lively conversation over dinner,
Have you guys decided on a date for the wedding ceremony?
Oliver asked his brother. Then, we're about to decide. We'd love some suggestions for good venues. The brother and his fiancée replied. Oliver's brother, a promising banker, and his fiancée, working at a securities firm, were both solid professionals. Thinking they would prefer something luxurious, considering they'd invite bosses and work colleagues, I suggested some famous venues where my corporate friends had their weddings. The fiancée searched the venues on her mobile phone, happily engrossed in a page showing a venue with a garden chapel. Then Oliver chimed in.
Hey, why don't we do the wedding ceremony together? How about a restaurant wedding?
And so he had proposed with a casual tone. It was something I had hoped would happen eventually, but I was shocked by his sudden suggestion, especially since he hadn't yet formally met my parents. Then, from somewhere, I heard a distinct sking noise. I couldn't believe it, but it seemed like the sound came from my BIL's fiancée. She was making an incredibly dissatisfied face and muttering under her breath.
BIL's girlfriend might be okay with such a ceremony, but
Then Lucas, Oliver's brother, exclaimed.
Bro, that's a great idea. These kinds of stylish ceremonies are becoming more popular.
He seemed genuinely excited about Oliver's suggestion. Being more displeased, the fiancée glared at me more, as if to stop Oliver from saying whatever he wanted. But she was glaring at the wrong person. If she had a problem, I wished she would speak up to the enthusiastic brothers instead. Subsequently, driven by the brothers' excitement, we ended up planning a restaurant wedding, and everything progressed quickly. In a flurry, we managed to greet my parents, and the 4 of us dined out to choose a venue. As days passed, the once disgruntled fiancé warmed up to Oliver, who was now BIL, and they got along so well that one would think they were the couple getting married. However, her attitude towards me remained unchanged. And so, 6 months later, the 2 couples held their restaurant weddings. After the marriage, I switched from full-time to part-time at work, focusing more on household chores. I left for work after sending Oliver off, returned home earlier to prepare dinner, and waited for Oliver's return. This became my routine. Sometimes, my BIL and his wife, both working full-time, relied on our dinner unexpectedly. It seemed cooking was too much of a hassle for them. Camila, my sale, came with just a token gift, evidently expecting me to cook, sparing herself the effort. At the dinner table, Camila oddly sat next to Oliver instead of her husband, treating me more like a convenient housekeeper. Honestly, their visits were far from welcome. Moreover, she indirectly criticized me, saying I looked plain or that my only talent was messing with flowers. I couldn't stand being demeaned in front of Oliver, but I hated confrontations, so I pretended not to mind Camila's words. Instead, after they left,
Why does she look down on people so much? It's terrible to imply someone's worthless if they don't work at an office.
I vented to Oliver.
She's a competent and successful woman. Maybe you're just hearing it that way, Luna. It sounds like you're envious. You shouldn't say things like that.
But his response was always defensive of Camila. Oliver, proud of his brother's achievements, seemed unwilling to hear anything negative about his brother's wife. It felt like he was implying I was the problem, listing all of Camila's virtues instead. Recently, my daily life had changed a bit due to Lucas's sudden solo assignment. Camila, too, seems somewhat reluctant to come uninvited to our dinners alone. With fewer visits from her, I was free from her snide comments and had been able to spend my days more peacefully. But now, a different worry had surfaced. For some reason, Oliver had been coming home late at night, day after day, leaving me to have dinner and go to bed alone. It was really worrying that he had been returning home after midnight so frequently. I hoped he didn't fall ill. One morning, as Oliver hurriedly got ready for work.
You've been coming home late recently. Are you okay? I'm worried you might wear yourself out.
I asked him. Oliver didn't even look at me.
No need to worry. It's just a contest. I'm busy preparing for a hair contest.
He stammered.
I haven't heard anything about a hair contest.
Usually, he'd make a big deal about entering a hair contest weeks in advance, but this time, nothing. Isn't that strange? Sensing his haste, I asked.
When is this contest? You didn't mention it before. Did you decide to enter suddenly?
Without turning face to me, he replied.
Yeah, that's right. I overlooked the invitation. I've been busy arranging for a cut model and stuff.
He didn't even look at me. Come to think of it, when a contest was near, a really cute cut model used to come to the salon after hours. Is she coming this time too?
Is it the same cut model you usually have?
I asked nonchalantly. Oliver exaggeratedly replied.
Yeah, that's right. I've been keeping her late. Really, I feel so bad about it.
His manner of speaking seemed exaggerated.
What is this? This feels so forced. Doesn't his speech sound unnatural?
Despite my feelings.
Is that really okay? It's dangerous to keep a girl late every day, even if you're short on time.
When I looked at Oliver, he seemed determined to avoid eye contact. Glancing at his watch, he said.
Look at the time. I'm going to be late.
Ignoring my words, he hurried out the door.
Did he just run away?
That reaction was so unnatural. Am I overthinking this? Could it be something with the cut model, an affair? No, that can't be it. The more I thought about it, the worse my thoughts got. After all, such things are unthinkable, aren't they? It's just my bad habit of overthinking. I need to stop that. It's just the late nights because of the hair contest preparations, that's all. Carrying these troubled thoughts, I got ready and headed to work. When I arrived at the shop, Mason, the manager of the salon where Oliver worked, was there picking out flowers for the salon. It was usually Oliver who picked the flowers, so it was unusual to see Mason here. Mason said he leaves the flower selection to Oliver because he doesn't know much about them. Could it be that Oliver asked Mason to pick the flowers to avoid further questions about this morning's conversation? I decided to probe a little.
Oliver is participating in a hair contest with you, right? Good luck with that,
I said to Mason. But Mason looked confused.
Which hair contest?
We don't have any such plans. He asked. I also asked about the cut model, but he said they hadn't requested any recently. Apparently, the model was Mason's cousin, who was currently studying abroad. As for the late nights, Mason said that Oliver had been leaving the salon at the regular closing time, so there was no way he had to come home after midnight. It seemed like everything Oliver told me was a lie. So, what had Oliver been doing every night, and with whom? While my suspicion about the cut model was cleared, I still felt uneasy. Stunned and trying to grasp the situation. Should I subtly ask him about it? Mason offered. I thought about accepting Mason's offer, but would Oliver give him a straight answer? I felt like Oliver, being so good at talking, would give vague responses. It seemed more likely that something was going on. I didn't want to give Oliver any chance to concoct an excuse. I had to keep it a secret that I was aware of his lies and probing into the matter. I told Mason that I would handle it myself for now, and asked him to keep our conversation secret, saying I would seek his advice if needed. That night, I decided to wait for Oliver and ask him as if I was oblivious to everything. I doubted he would tell me the truth anyway. Around midnight, Oliver finally came home. While claiming to have been working late, he looked slightly startled when he saw me waiting up.
I'm home. I'm exhausted. Finally got the new haircut done,
he said, unaware that I knew everything. I wondered what kind of amazing haircut he completed. I asked Oliver, who was trying to mask his nervousness. You must be worn out. Hey, do you mind if I ask something? As I spoke quietly. What's up? What do you want to know? His voice trembled. Are you really working? Are you really preparing for a hair contest? Oliver replied. Well, of course I am. What else would it be? His unease was apparent. He seemed intent on sticking to his lies. In that case. Oh? What about cheating? Yes or no? I asked directly, and his face changed completely.
What? Of course I'm not.
Oliver began to get defensive. Even the usually eloquent Oliver had no room for jokes. Despite his panic, he tried to weave an escape with desperate excuses. You know, Mason told me. The hair contest is a lie, right? Wouldn't it be better to just come clean? What are you really doing? I cornered him with no escape. Apparently, he had no excuses left and, trembling with clenched fists.
Fine. I'll say it. It's an affair. I've fallen in love with someone else,
he blurted out. His confession came off as resigned and frustrated. He even started to get angry, as if it was some sort of injustice. I tried to get him to confess who the other person was, but he refused to say, probably because it was someone he shouldn't be involved with. No matter how much I pressed, my anger only grew.
Then, I'll hire a detective or whatever it takes to find out. Just be ready.
It's Camila. Hearing my words, he went pale and confessed in a defeated tone. Camila? Isn't she Lucas's wife? I was shocked, and he retorted.
Yes, Camila. She's pregnant with my child.
You haven't had a child with me, but you did with someone else, and that someone is your brother's wife? That's despicable. As I hurled accusations at Oliver, he retorted with unreasonable words.
It's your fault for being infertile. Anyway, I'm going to take responsibility and divorce you.
His words were infuriatingly unfair. That explained why he always sided with his Sael over me.
Are you kidding? Do you even realize what you're saying? Does Lucas know?
To have been treated this way by him, I couldn't help but be angry.
It doesn't matter. Camila and I won't be separated. She's going to divorce Lucas and be with me. No one can stop us,
Oliver declared defiantly.
If you don't like it, then let's get a divorce right now.
Disgusted by his words, I retorted.
Don't like it? That's an understatement. I'll gladly divorce you.
I decided then and there to cut ties with this hopeless man. The next day, I told everything to my parents, my in-laws, and Lucas, who was at his assignment location. Shocked and furious, they couldn't believe Oliver and Camila had an affair and were expecting a child. Despite their family's reactions, both were unapologetic and brazen.
All this is Asael's fault, right? If she's upset about the affair or didn't notice it, it's her own fault. If Lucas wants to blame someone, he should blame Asael.
Camila even had the audacity to put the blame on me. Their lack of remorse disgusted everyone. Lucas decided to divorce Camila, and both Oliver and Camila were disowned by our parents and Lucas. Later, when I reported the situation to Mason, the concerned salon manager,
he was one of our recommended hairstylists. This could affect our salon's reputation. I need to think about what to do with Oliver,
he said while crossing his arms. 3 months later, after Camila's remarriage prohibition period ended, she and Oliver got married. Yet, for some reason, I was getting calls from Oliver on my mobile phone. I was at work, and as far as I was concerned, he was a person from my past. I had nothing to say to him, yet he kept calling persistently if I ignored him. Oliver, still somehow keeping his job under Mason's management and working in the beauty salon on the 2nd floor, was someone I don't want showing up at the flower shop. Reluctantly, I answered the call. "Hey, can you help me out here?" His voice was weak and pitiful, a far cry from his earlier bravado.
"Why should I? I have no obligation to help you. Can you stop bothering me during work?"
As I was about to hang up, "Don't be so cold. Can I come over to talk?" Oliver appeared to really want to talk. Not wanting him to actually come, I decided to listen. It turned out he was in quite a laughable predicament. According to Oliver, on the day they registered their marriage, Camila received a demand for alimony in a divorce lawsuit via a formal notice.
"What's this about?"
he questioned, and it turned out Camila had been having an affair with her boss, and his wife found out, demanding $50,000 in alimony. Moreover, she was pregnant, and it was unclear whether the child was Oliver's or her boss's. He might end up raising a child that isn't his.
"I have no confidence in raising a child that might not be mine. Tell me how to get a divorce."
His SOS to me was the last thing I needed.
"Just say what you told me,"
was all the advice I gave.
That's it.
That was the last call I ever received from Oliver. Nevertheless, both my former sister-in-law and ex-husband were such despicable people. They were both broke after paying us alimony in the divorce suits. Oliver was likely to be fired by Mason now, and with Camila's affair scandal at work, she would probably be fired too, burdened with a hefty debt of $50,000 for alimony. What would they do now? Face bankruptcy? It seemed like a miserable life awaits them, socially and personally obliterated. As for me, I remarried a man who supplies flowers to my shop and am expecting a long-awaited child. I live happily, surrounded by beautiful flowers, a kind and honest husband, and looking forward to holding my lovely child. Despite being called plain, living true to myself is best. I've learned my lesson to stay away from smooth talkers and those who look down on others. No employee by that name works here, I'm afraid. I realized my husband Cody left something behind when he went on a business trip, so I called his office and told his name. To my surprise, they said no such person worked there. What could this mean? Suspicious, I started rummaging through Cody's belongings in his room. Then, from his luggage, I found something shocking, something unbelievable. When I found this astonishing truth, I decided to revenge. My name is Rachel Thunderbolt. This year marks my 3rd year of marriage to Cody. Since I was the only daughter, Cody became an adopted son-in-law of the Thunderbolt family to carry on our name, and his last name became Thunderbolt too. He gladly accepted to take on my family's name. We had a blissful marriage, usually busy with our jobs, but we promised to have a baby someday. I could never have predicted our happy life would come to such a sudden end. It all started on the day Cody left for his business trip. While cleaning his room, I found a large envelope. It looked like important documents for his trip.
Oh no!
I tried calling Cody, but his cell phone was off and I couldn't reach him. Maybe he was on a plane or on Amtrak train, going through the tunnel. Thinking it urgent, I called his company next.
Hello, this is Seven Forest Corporation. I'm Cody Thunderbolt's wife. He forgot something important and I need to contact him right away.
Cody Thunderbolt. Please hold for a moment. The man on the phone, presumably Cody's colleague, sounded perplexed. Soon, the call was put on hold, and music began to play. After being on hold for about 3 minutes, the same man returned with an odd word.
I'm sorry, but we don't have an employee named Cody Thunderbolt. Are you sure you have the right company? What? But you are Seven Forest Corporation, right?
Yes, that's correct, but I was certain it was Cody's workplace. I double-checked the phone number, and it wasn't a common company name. Despite repeatedly confirming the company name and address, they kept insisting they had no employee by that name. All right, thank you. Sorry to bother you. I hung up the phone, utterly confused, but one thing was certain. Cody was lying about something. With a mix of confusion and a desire to find some clue, I searched his room again. And there, in his bag, I found an employee ID card for Seven Forest Corporation. It had his photo on it. He definitely worked there, no doubt about it. But the name written here. It said Cody Harris, a completely different last name. Confused and dizzy, I squatted down. I took a deep breath to calm my mind. Cody had a big secret. Convinced of this, I couldn't just sit still. I went straight to a private investigator to look into his background. Cody's business trip, if his words were right, was for a week. The investigator was skilled, and I got the report before Cody returned. But the content was shocking. To put it bluntly, Rachel Thunderbolt, you're single.
What? I don't understand what you mean.
Cody has another family.
Does that mean he's cheating on me?
Well, it's more like you're the other woman.
What?
According to the investigator, there was no marriage record between me and Cody. He had another family, with whom he was legally married, so they were his real wife and children. Was I not married? What does this mean? It was a shockingly unbelievable fact. After receiving the report from the investigator, I couldn't say anything and rode the bus home, absent-minded.
We'll need quite a bit of money for a wedding, huh? I can't afford it right now, but one day we'll definitely have one. I'll work harder so we can also go on a honeymoon.
3 years ago, Cody said that with a refreshing smile and promised. It's okay if we don't have a wedding. I'm happy as is. I smiled and said that. His parents had passed away, leaving him all alone, so we only reported our marriage to my parents. Since I was the only daughter, he took the initiative to take on the Thunderbolt name. Of course, my parents were delighted with this. We signed the marriage application, but around that time, I got busy at work and couldn't find time to go to the city office with him. Rachel, you're busy, right? I'll submit it when the time is right. So, I entrusted him with the application, assuming he had submitted it. But in reality, he never did, and so Cody and I were just strangers. We both had different jobs and social insurance, and we kept our finances separate. So, something that should have been apparent from tax documents or something went completely unnoticed. Cody must have known and done it on purpose. I believed we were married and lived as such. Thinking about it made me feel a deep anger rising within me. A week passed, and it was the day Cody returned home. I left work early to wait for him.
Cody, we need to talk.
As soon as he entered the living room with the carry-on bag he used for his trip, I talked to him. What? I have souvenirs, you know, he said nonchalantly. Seeing that just made me angrier.
Your real name is Cody Harris, isn't it? What?
I confronted Cody with the employee ID card I found in his room, and he looked shaken for a moment.
Well, I just kept Harris as my name at work. What are you talking about? When we met, you called yourself Cody Smith. Did I? I don't remember.
Cody tried to feign ignorance, but I presented him with the private investigator's report.
I went behind your back, sorry, but I had a private investigator look into you. You have another family, and I was just a fling, right?
He seemed taken aback by the evidence but quickly tried to regain composure with a smile.
It wasn't just a fling. I take everything seriously. Don't give me that. You clearly said you'd submit our marriage application. Did I say that? Then how come we're not married? Why is that?
Cody kept making irresponsible words, trying to dodge my questioning. His careless attitude only made me more stressed. You were the one who said, it's okay if we don't have a wedding.
I'm happy as is. That's different. This is a case of bigamy, a violation of the law.
That's fine. Since I never submitted the marriage application with you, it's not bigamy.
So my feelings don't matter at all.
Finally, my anger exploded. I slammed the table, causing a glass to topple and water to spill onto the floor. Ah, you're so noisy. I didn't think you were such a troublesome woman. Cody picked up his carry-on bag again and opened the living room door.
Then, I'm going home. Going home? Where to?
To my real home, obviously. It seems like a hassle to stay with you now. I won't come here for a while. Cool off in the meantime. Leaving these words as if I was the villain, Cody left the house.
Coward! Irresponsible man!
I threw a tissue box, but the front door closed mercilessly, and Cody never came back after that. I won't let this go. Didn't he realize in these 3 years that I'm not a woman who would just let things slide? I decided to make Cody pay for this. The next day, I called Misty Harris, Cody's legal wife, whose number was in the investigator's report. A woman answered, and I could hear a boy's voice in the background. Hello, are you Misty Harris, Cody's wife?
Yes, I am.
My name is Rachel Thunderbolt. I've been, well acquainted with Cody. Unsure how to start, my words trailed off, and Misty sounded very puzzled. I briefly explained the situation and arranged to meet her in person soon. At a coffee shop, as soon as we met, Misty glared at me with disdain.
You have the nerve to show up after messing with someone else's husband.
Wait, please. I'm a victim too. I showed her the investigator's report and explained everything in detail. I still can't believe I was the other woman.
Cody doing such a thing. Unforgivable.
Misty believed me after seeing the evidence and was visibly furious.
I understand the situation now. Not only did he play with your feelings, Rachel, but he's also been deceiving me all this time. So, I want to punish Cody, and I need your help.
All right, I'll help you. And so, we conspired together to plan our revenge on Cody. The day of reckoning came. On his day off, Cody was relaxing in front of the TV at Misty's house. Their elementary school-aged child was out with friends, so seizing the moment, I stormed into the house. Your other wife has graciously come to visit, Misty announced, leading me to the living room. Cody, who had been lounging, sprang up in shock at the sight of me.
Geez! Rachel!
Long time no see, Cody.
What? Why? How?
Cody, in confusion, pointed alternately between us.
What's this? When did you two meet?
Misty and I have become very close friends.
Huh.
At that moment, the doorbell rang, and Misty's parents, along with Cody's, arrived, looking furious. Cody, who was lounging around in sweatpants, straightened up quickly.
What? What brings everyone here together?
He was completely intimidated by their devilish expressions.
Rachel, did you set this up? I got Misty's help too. So, Cody, you have no allies here.
By yesterday, Misty had already told her parents that Cody was cheating. I had managed to get the contact details of Cody's parents, who were actually alive, and sent them a registered letter with the investigator's report and a summary of everything that had happened. And I called them here for Cody's punishment.
What are you doing? What's your aim with all this? First, you have something you need to do, right? You know what it is? You want money? No. You should start with an apology.
Pressed by my stern words, Cody looked pleadingly at Misty, who just stared back expressionlessly.
We'll demand compensation after you've done what you should. Right, Cody!
Misty and I towered over Cody, who had squatted down in exhaustion. Both Misty's and Cody's parents surrounded him with stern looks.
Wait, if you two are getting along so well, there's no need to fight, right? Why not keep things as they are, maintain both families?
Even in this situation, Cody tried to escape responsibility. He was just alpha an irresponsible person.
I like both of you. I wanted to maintain good relationships, something like that.
His shameless attitude was almost refreshing in its thoroughness. But both sets of parents berated him fiercely.
Are you joking? Don't you feel sorry for Misty and Rachel?
Shouts and tearful voices filled the air, and Cody shrank back, letting out a pathetic whimper. I took a deep breath and spoke calmly.
I understand exactly what you want. You do? So we can keep things this way, right? No way! I'm utterly disappointed. I'm breaking up with you. And I'll be expecting compensation, so make sure you're prepared.
What? No. As I declared my decision to part ways, Misty followed suit.
I'm divorcing you too. Expect to pay compensation and child support. I don't ever want to see your face again. Get out.
Cody looked up at me, his eyes tearing, and tried to plead.
Before I say, don't think of coming back to my place. I won't let you in. I'll apologize properly. Let's submit our marriage application this time, right? Let's get married. Don't be ridiculous. I never want to see you again. Goodbye.
Cody was disowned by his parents then and there, losing his last refuge. He was ousted from Misty's house by everyone present and stood dazed outside the gate. That was the anticlimactic end of our relationship. Now for the epilogue. Cody, having to pay us compensation and losing everything, stayed at cheap hotels and internet cafes. But after my call to his company about his business trip raised suspicion, his boss confronted him, and his double life was exposed. The whole company found out through the colleague who took the call, so Cody quit his job, fleeing in shame. True to his irresponsible nature, he ran away just because he felt uncomfortable, despite having no money. Eventually, Cody ran out of money and became homeless, as I heard. As for me, I ended my relationship with Cody, but the emotional scars of spending 3 years as the other woman didn't heal easily. I buried myself in work to forget, leading to a life consumed by my job. A male colleague, concerned about me, asked, "Is something wrong?" and we started going out for drinks together. While venting over drinks, I found myself crying, but he just silently supported me. Having lost trust in people, I began to feel that maybe I could trust this man, and we started dating. I'm experiencing a modest happiness now. Someday, I'm sure I'll find true happiness. Stop leeching off me, you useless thing. For over 20 years, I believed I had devoted myself to my husband, Thomas. Yet, this is what Thomas really thought of me. I wasn't leeching off him. I was merely devoted to him. But I can't put these thoughts into words. As my strength drains away, Thomas continues. Now that Richard is a working adult, you've got no reason to leech off me, right? But... Quiet. I don't want to hear your excuses. Thomas raises his voice. Oh, I can't do this anymore. My feelings will never reach him. At that moment, I hear something snap inside me. It's the sound of the thread of love that connected our hearts, breaking. At the same time, my feelings for him begin to fade. We were husband and wife until just now, but now he feels like a stranger. He had been using me from the start. He never loved me. Otherwise, he wouldn't blatantly cheat and try to kick me out. I don't care what happens to such a man. No, I must bring him down thoroughly. With my mind made up, I lift my face and stare intently at him. My name is Elizabeth. I'm a 50-year-old housewife, married to Thomas for 25 years. Our son Richard, born a few years into our marriage, graduated from college and started working this year. Now my childrearing days have come to an end, I can finally do what I want. That's what I'm thinking now. But there's one problem. It's my relationship with Thomas. He is neither a good husband nor a good father. In fact, it's hard to find anything good about him. He cheats, and he doesn't properly contribute to the household expenses. Please, at least bring in enough for the living expenses. Huh? Don't get cocky when you're living off me. That's always his response. Maybe it's hopeless. Should I consider divorce? Lately, I've been thinking about it more and more. But I can't easily bring myself to mention divorce. The truth is, his father, Joseph, who is currently hospitalized and in poor health, entrusted Thomas to my care. I have to be grateful to Joseph and bear it as long as I can. His words can't be ignored. But the desire to divorce is strong. Caught between these conflicting emotions, I find myself reminiscing about happier times before our marriage. The trigger for that past happiness was a misfortune that befell my father, David. My family runs a small eatery. My father was in charge of cooking, and my mother served the customers. Needless to say, the food was delicious. But my father was incredibly bad at business. His dream was to feed delicious food to the customers. As many people as possible. A noble idea, I think. But that was the only thing he focused on in running the eatery. So he doesn't really think about profitability. Profit didn't matter as long as the customers were satisfied. That was his way of doing business. Obviously, it wasn't profitable. Consequently, our family finances were always tight. Nevertheless, as a child, I was proud to see the satisfied customers. So I never interfered with my father's business. However, during my college years, a crisis struck. The company supplying ingredients to our eatery went bankrupt due to unforeseen circumstances. We've already paid this month's bill. If this continues, we might have to close our restaurant. Our situation was already difficult. There was no extra money to spare. Seeing my parents so upset made me anxious, but as a college student, there wasn't much I could do. And it was unlikely that the bankrupt company could refund. Our only option seemed to be closing our eatery. That's when a regular customer of the eatery said, "Closing this eatery? It's too good for that. What a waste. But the company supplying us has gone bankrupt, and now we're in debt. Then let me help you personally, and you can revive the eatery with that." The regular, truly lending the money immediately to my father. "You've saved us. We'll definitely repay you. Don't worry about the money for now. Just keep making delicious meals." Saying that, the man left the shop. Afterward, my father started dealing with a larger food wholesaler, which offered ingredients at a cheaper rate. Fortune seemed to smile upon us, and our family's eatery was saved from bankruptcy. About a year later, I went with my father to return the money to that regular customer. While my father and the man talked, a young man approached me. "It seems you've borrowed money from my father." Listening to him, I learned that he was the son of the man who lent us money. His name is Thomas, and he works for his father's company. "You're beautiful. How about going out with me sometime?" "Me? Go out with you? Why not?" Think of it as a way to say thanks for the loan. It's true that we were helped by the loan. But my father had already properly thanked him. I don't feel obliged to go that far, but as I thought this, Thomas whispered to me, "The daughter of an eatery owner is ungrateful." I could spread that around, you know. But that's... I couldn't talk back. Even if he did spread rumors, I don't think it would harm me. But it could trouble my father. And what would the customers think? With these thoughts, I couldn't refuse his offer. I don't like it, but I'll tolerate it this once. With that thought, I went out with him. But it turned out to be more fun than I expected. He was interesting to talk to, and he knew lots of places to go. The restaurants he chose were all tastefully picked. Despite my initial bad impression, he might be a good person after all. Maybe it was wrong to think that way. I soon found myself being asked out by him. I have fun when I'm with you. I have fun too. It is my first time that I can think about marrying. If that was to you who are serious and good girl. Swayed by his simple words, I started a relationship with him, considering marriage. After that, he continued to guide me in various ways. Eventually, a few years later, I found myself married to him. Of course, I never thought at the beginning of our marriage that it was all a trap by him. He seemed genuinely kind, and I felt loved by him. But it was all a lie. As soon as we got married, his attitude changed drastically. Here, this is my salary for the month. Manage it well. I opened the envelope he handed me. It was a salary statement. The salary itself was transferred to the bank, so it wasn't strange to receive only the statement. What struck me as odd was that the statement was handwritten. Nowadays, it's almost unheard of. But when I got married, 25 years ago, it was a time when personal computers were just becoming widespread, so a handwritten statement wasn't out of place. There's over $1,000, so it should be enough, right? I murmured to myself, trying to be convinced. I managed our life with that small amount of money. As our marriage continued, I gradually felt something was off. It was his lifestyle. He left home at a fixed time every morning. But his return was never at a set time. It varied day by day. I'm busy with various jobs as my father's successor. Then, could you call before coming home?
Stop nagging. All right, I'll call.
He shouted. His attitude made me feel even more uneasy. Maybe he's out playing around. Perhaps he even has an affair. I had these thoughts, but I was too scared of his shouting to confront him. In the end, I couldn't say anything, despite my doubts about his behavior. Eventually, our son Richard was born. I thought maybe he'd change a bit with a child. But he remained the same. Looking back, I think that's when I started considering divorce. Then, when Richard was about middle school age, I got a call from my mother while I was out shopping for dinner.
What? Dad's in the hospital.
It was news of my father's hospitalization. I rushed to the hospital.
Mom's just exaggerating.
My father laughed heartily. I felt relieved. But in that moment, I remembered something and my heart leaped.
Oh no! I forgot to contact Thomas.
By then, it was too late. My mobile phone was filled with countless calls from him. When I called back in a hurry, his displeased voice came through. Where are you? What are you doing?
Hurry back and make my dinner.
I'm sorry. My father.
Huh? Your father? Your own father?
Thomas asked in a slightly harsh tone. I answered in a small voice. Yes. He was suddenly hospitalized.
Your father has nothing to do with it. You are my wife.
I closed my eyes in fear at his shouting. I'm terrified of his loud voice. But I couldn't just let it go without responding. I braced myself and retorted.
Isn't it natural to worry about one's father? That should be okay, right? Shut up. Don't talk back to me.
No, I will say this. You would rush to your own father's side, wouldn't you? When I asked this, he suddenly fell silent. Putting himself in my shoes must have struck a chord. I thought so, but his reply was beyond my imagination.
Huh? Even if my father was hospitalized, I'd ignore it. After all, I wouldn't be troubled if he wasn't around.
I was speechless. This has to be a lie. That's what I thought, but I couldn't deny it. After much hesitation, I had said this to him. I'm not like you. Sorry, but eat out tonight. That was all I could say, my maximum effort. I hung up the phone, still in a daze. Since that incident, I truly couldn't believe him anymore. It was then that I finally realized that the happy times before our marriage were all an illusion.
Ah, I see. He wanted a housekeeper, not a wife.
Saying it out loud made me sad. But I couldn't just stay sad.
That's right. If I'm going to divorce, I need to prepare.
I started to prepare for the divorce. And then, a few years passed. This time, Thomas's father, Joseph, was hospitalized. And his condition was quite serious.
He might not be able to leave the hospital,
the doctor had said. I relayed Joseph's condition to Thomas. But Thomas remained unbothered.
Does it mean it'll cost money?
It's not the time to worry about money, don't you understand? I get it. I'll talk to my brother. Thomas contacted his brother James. James is married but doesn't have children. So Thomas suggested to James that he might be able to bear the hospital expenses.
Can you pay for it? We have Richard and Elizabeth, and it's tough for us.
He spoke as if it was someone else's problem. It reminded me of the time my father was hospitalized. It seemed he really didn't care about Joseph. I couldn't take it anymore.
Enough. I'll figure something out and pay for Joseph's hospital bills.
Don't forget what you just said, Thomas shouted. I nodded firmly. In the end, my words triggered us taking on the burden of Joseph's hospital expenses. Also, due to his illness, Joseph stepped down from his position as the president. And Thomas took over as the president. Regardless, Thomas didn't like that I had spoken up. Since then, he blatantly stopped coming home. Even when discussing Richard's future plans. Thomas ignored my calls and didn't return home.
Dad's not coming home again today.
I'm sorry, Richard. I'm causing you trouble.
It's okay, I don't care about Dad. But I want to go to a university in Boston. That's right. Don't worry about the tuition, I'll manage it somehow.
Soon after, Richard's enrollment in a Boston university was confirmed. Naturally, Thomas didn't see Richard off. Once Richard moved to Boston, the house suddenly became quiet. By then, Thomas was only coming home about once a week.
There's also Joseph's hospital fees. Could you transfer a bit more?
Huh?
I've already transferred over half of my salary. It should be enough for you alone.
The amount Thomas transferred was just a little money. Clearly, it was only a fraction of his salary. Saying over half was definitely a lie. I knew that. But I didn't have the energy to complain. Years passed, and I received news that Richard had found a job. Richard has got a job now. It's probably a good time to talk about divorce. In these years, I had prepared for the divorce. It was just a matter of timing. When and where should I say it to avoid any trouble? Such thoughts constantly occupied my mind. It's not even about not wanting to cause a scene. I laughed at myself sarcastically. Then one day, I had been to visit Joseph. After chatting with Joseph as usual, I returned home. Reaching the entrance, I was startled. For some reason, the front door was unlocked. Could it be a burglar? Tentatively, I peeked inside the house. Then I heard the sound of the TV and Thomas's laughter coming from the living room. So Thomas was home. Relieved, I entered the living room. There, Thomas was watching TV, laughing loudly.
You were home.
Yeah, I thought I'd tidy up the house a bit.
Tidy up?
His words made me look around. On closer inspection, some items in the room were missing.
Wait, it looks like some things are missing.
Yeah, I threw them out.
Your stuff.
Threw out?
My things?
Shocked, I hurried back to my room. The room was empty. No computer, no TV, not even my favorite cup. Even the bed was gone.
What's the meaning of this?
I don't need them anymore, so I threw them out.
Don't need them? What am I supposed to do now?
I shouted, and Thomas frowned. Then he looked away and sighed. I guess. I'm tired of supporting you.
What are you saying? I'm your wife.
I retorted, and Thomas seemed irritated. He suddenly raised his voice.
Do I have to spell it out?
Stop leeching off me, you useless thing. For over 20 years, I believed I had devoted myself to my husband, Thomas. Yet, this is what Thomas really thought of me. I wasn't leeching off him. I was merely devoted to him. But I can't put these thoughts into words. As my strength drains away, he continues.
Now that Richard is a working adult, you've got no reason to leech off me, right? But... quiet. I don't want to hear your excuses.
He raises his voice. Oh, I can't do this anymore. My feelings will never reach him. At that moment, I hear something snap inside me. It's the sound of the thread of love that connected our hearts, breaking. At the same time, my feelings for him begin to fade. We were husband and wife until just now, but now he feels like a stranger. He had been using me from the start. He never loved me. Otherwise, he wouldn't blatantly cheat and try to kick me out. I don't care what happens to such a man. No, I must bring him down thoroughly. With my mind made up, I lift my face and stare intently at him.
What? Got a complaint?
None.
If you want me out, then I'll leave as you wish.
I slammed the living room door shut, heading to my room. But there was nothing of mine left.
Don't bother looking. I had the garbage collectors take everything away. Which company did you use? The flyer is right there.
That's the one. I picked up the collector's flyer from the floor. As I called the number, I told him.
I'll make sure you regret this.
Saying that, I left the house. Soon the call connected. I explained the situation, and they understood immediately. Apparently, they had sensed something off about his behavior. The garbage collectors had kept everything as it was when they picked it up.
I'll be there shortly. Thank you.
I thanked them politely and hung up. Afterward, I visited the collector's location. I expressed my gratitude and had them move my belongings to a newly rented storage unit. I was relieved to find my belongings safe. He shouldn't think I'll just let this go. Grinding my teeth, I called Richard. I briefly explained the situation and then said,
So, I've decided to move out, considering a divorce. Richard, prepare yourself, okay?
Oh, okay. Bye. Richard quickly ended the call. He seemed scared of me. Was I that angry? I wondered, storing my mobile phone in my bag. Then I headed to a nearby business hotel. Actually, I had already decided where to move. The reason was simple. I was planning to discuss divorce with Thomas soon. Divorce and then move there. That was my plan for starting a new life. Well, it's just a bit earlier than planned. Honestly, I wasn't in trouble. It was just moving things forward by about 2 weeks. 2 weeks in a hotel. What a waste. Can't be helped. But as a housewife, I couldn't help but think it wasteful.
Maybe I should bill him for this hotel stay? Well, whatever it is, brace yourself, Thomas.
I muttered and then started working on my post-divorce plans. About 10 days into my stay at the business hotel, Thomas called me during lunch. As soon as I answered, Thomas raised his voice.
You took my money.
What are you talking about?
Don't play dumb. It's about Dad's hospital bills. The hospital just called asking for payment.
Oh, that's what he's talking about. I sighed as I replied.
You should be the one paying, shouldn't you? I'm no longer related to this, having been kicked out. You've been receiving living expenses from me. It should have been paid from there.
Yes, that's true.
But isn't the debit card for that bank account with you now?
I retorted calmly. However, I knew there was no money in that bank account. That's why I couldn't stop laughing.
I have the debit card, but there's no money in it. That's why I'm saying you took it.
I didn't take anything.
Don't lie. Who else could use it?
Didn't he realize that he had transferred too little? I replied in disbelief. It was just too little money from the start. If there's no money for the hospital bills, why not use your own allowance?
Allowance.
He started to panic, visibly confused. It seemed he thought I was unaware. Since the beginning of our marriage, he had been giving me handwritten salary statements. It was to hide the fact that he was siphoning off a portion of his salary. In other words, the skimmed money was his allowance. I once asked Joseph about your salary. How much is Thomas earning?
So, that's.
He looked puzzled but told me. So, I knew about the skimmed money. As I told him, he fell silent. There was a long silence, making me wonder if the call had dropped. Then suddenly, he raised his voice.
What's wrong with using the money I earned? It's your fault for using up the money I gave you.
Okay. So?
We're getting divorced. I'm going to demand compensation. You'll pay back the money you spent.
At that, I sneered. Perfect timing, I had evidence. Now Thomas couldn't escape the truth. I responded with a smile. Oh, thank you. I wanted to get divorced too. Come to my place for the divorce discussion.
What? No, but.
You want to divorce, right? I've prepared evidence of your affair and am waiting. Though I couldn't see him, his voice sounded strained.
Evidence of an affair? What are you talking about?
No use pretending. I have the evidence photos.
Evidence photos?
I could almost see him getting pale. Suppressing my laughter, I continued. Then, I'll give you the address. Let's meet next Sunday to discuss in detail. I gave him the address of a certain location and quickly ended the call. I had successfully set up the divorce confrontation. Now, if only I could make him apologize. Honestly, that would be the trickiest part. I steeled myself for the upcoming meeting. On the promised Sunday. I was already at the meeting place before the scheduled time. I wondered when he would arrive. Looking around, I spotted Thomas in the corner of my eye.
Over here!
I waved and called out. He looked up, surprised. Here? Yes. Didn't I give you the address? But, this place, whose mansion is it? Thomas looked behind me. There stood a mansion worth about $1 million. Much larger than a normal house, with a garden. A 3-story building with a basement and a theater room. Luxury cars parked in the built-in garage. Pointing at the mansion, I said with a smile. This is my house. It's newly built, so it's beautiful, right?
Your house?
Yes. I thought I'd live here after the divorce, so I started building it a while ago. Yes, the place I had called him to was my newly built house. Thomas, thinking of me as just a housewife, was understandably shocked. Pushing him from the back, I led him into the house. I guided him to the living room. Let's start our discussion. This is my lawyer. I introduced my waiting lawyer. But Thomas was too distracted. Restless, his gaze never settled. He kept looking around, not even trying to see the evidence photos of his affair on the table. Also, he didn't respond when spoken to. Frankly, the discussion was unproductive. Eventually, he asked in a quiet mutter. How did you afford this house? While thinking, is that what you're curious about? I answered. I just bought it, normally.
Liar. A housewife can't afford to buy a house.
It's said that to buy a $1 million house, one needs an income of around $150,000 per year. But I have that kind of income. So, I answered calmly. I earn that much. Do you have a problem with that?
No, but how?
I started helping out at a friend's company, and before I knew it, things turned out like this. The story goes back a few years. When I decided to divorce during my father's hospitalization turmoil, I started preparing for it. The first thing I did was look for a job. I wouldn't be able to live without a job after the divorce. So, I searched for a job to sustain myself. But good jobs aren't easy to find. That's when I consulted my close friend Linda. Why don't you help me out with my work? What kind of work do you do? Aquaculture on land. Land-based aquaculture involves artificially creating facilities like pools for farming. There are downsides, of course, but it prevents ocean pollution. It's an eco-friendly type of farming. Linda's father started it, and now Linda had taken over. So, you had been working there? Thomas asked tentatively. After I started helping, the business began to thrive. I was mainly involved in negotiations and administrative work. Linda was grateful for my help, and eventually, I was promoted to an executive position. It was all coincidental, but I believe luck is part of one's capabilities. Hearing my story, he looked dejected. Then, after a moment of thought, he suddenly looked up.
Okay. Let's pretend this divorce talk never happened. How about we start over?
As he spoke nonsense, I coldly replied. Are you crazy?
No, I genuinely want to start over with you.
Thomas pleaded fervently. But seeing that he was only dazzled by my money, I retorted with a raised eyebrow.
I refuse to be with someone who cheats. And someone who neglects Joseph.
No, about my father.
Enough. You don't know, but I was the one paying for Joseph's hospital bills.
The money Thomas gave me was really just a little. After paying for food, utilities, and other expenses, there was usually nothing left, sometimes not even enough. He only gave me that much. Obviously, there was no way to pay Joseph's hospital bills with it. At first, I managed somehow, but later I paid them with my salary.
And yet, you never listened to me or visited Joseph.
Well, that's because
I can't trust someone like that.
I raised my voice, and he fell silent. Then, the lawyer discussed the compensation. Thomas couldn't say anything. He just kept his head down until the end. Eventually, prompted by the lawyer, Thomas signed the divorce papers. The compensation was set at $30,000.
So, now that the divorce is settled, you'll pay Joseph's hospital bills.
Ah. Thomas nodded reluctantly. At least he didn't argue. I felt relieved. Finally, I sent him away, as if chasing him out. It's over at last. The only regret was that he never apologized. But I had one last card to play. If I played it, he would apologize. Thinking that, a smile crept onto my face. A few days later, after leaving the company, someone called out to me from behind.
Hey, Elizabeth!
Turning around, I saw Thomas standing there.
Don't address me so familiarly. We're divorced. Shut up. What did you do?
He looked at me with an angry, red face. His reaction told me everything. Ah, he must have heard that news at the company. I smiled and responded. What do you think I did?
Don't joke around. Tell me how you got me fired.
He stomped his foot. His frustration amused me, and a smile escaped.
Isn't it your own fault? Getting punished for having an affair with the office clerk?
His affair partner was a clerk at his company. Apparently, he did whatever he wanted because he was the president. After deciding to divorce, I reported the matter to Joseph. While Joseph regretted our divorce, he was furious about Thomas's actions. When I showed him the affair evidence photos, Joseph became even more angry. Then he said to me, I want to transfer all my company shares to you. To me? What about Thomas's brother?
No, to you. Use them to dethrone Thomas from his position as president.
That was Joseph's plan. His company is a corporation. For a president or any executive appointment, a shareholders' meeting resolution is necessary. Of course, it can also be decided by a board of directors resolution. However, Joseph's company isn't very large. He holds most of the issued shares. This means that as a shareholder, he could make decisions alone. But it's common for small company presidents to hold the majority of shares. If I inherited all of Joseph's shares, I could exercise the voting rights alone. Nevertheless, Thomas's dismissal wasn't my decision. I informed James about acquiring the shares, and only reported Thomas's affair. The rest was up to James' judgment.
James was considerate.
James, huh? Why would he do whatever you say?
It's not about following my orders. It's about doing what's best for the company.
As I said this, Thomas collapsed on the spot. Then, he began to mutter apologies.
I was wrong. I'm sorry, please forgive me.
I won't.
If things stay this way, I'll have no job and be left destitute.
That's not my concern. It's all his responsibility. I won't forgive you even if you apologize.
Please! Forgive me! I'm begging you!
He apologized profoundly right there. I turned my back. Sorry, but there's nothing I can do. Why not? If you own the shares.
I sold them to James and his wife. I don't want anything to do with you anymore.
At that moment, I heard his sobbing. Of course, I pretended not to hear and walked away. After his dismissal as president, Thomas had to leave the company. He might have stayed if he had been an employee or a working director. But Thomas was arrogant, having joined the company through Joseph's referral. I refused to be an employee. He even said that. So, when he was dismissed, he was kicked out immediately. Now he's working a part-time job at a grocery store, but re-employment at his age is difficult. He's likely to spend his old age in regret and without money. As for me, being divorced allowed me to focus more on my work. There's no talk of remarriage, but I have a few male colleagues. Spring might come again for me. I was thinking about this when Richard called. I'll bring my girlfriend over sometime.
That's great. I'm looking forward to it.
I failed in marriage, but I don't want Richard to. But I'm sure he'll be fine. Richard is much more sensible than me.
I want a divorce.
Fine, but I'm not paying any alimony in a divorce trial, you know? You don't work, so you must not have any money. Are you okay with that? More than money, protecting my own happiness is much more important. I don't want to stay in this house, nor do I want to live with this man. I'll definitely divorce and make you regret it. My name is Carolina. I was born and raised in the countryside, 58 years old, and picking mountain vegetables becomes my hobby when the weather gets warm. I love the peaceful countryside air, but there was a time in my life when I resented being from the countryside. Back then, I was in my 20s. After graduating high school, I got a job at a local department store, a position only offered to top students. I believe I lived a more glamorous life than others my age. Then one day, my boss said,
"A VIP customer is coming."
And I was assigned to assist a certain individual. That was my husband, Louis. Louis's family had produced a member of parliament, and even though Louis's direct family wasn't in politics, they were a well-known local business family. As the eldest son, Louis was set to inherit the family business and had significant influence locally. However, in the larger scope, their business was just one of many competitors. In the city, they would probably be overshadowed. Yet, in our area, Louis was something like a local king. But it was this assignment in the store that led to Louis taking a fancy to me. People around me said things like,
"Marrying a rich man, you're so lucky, your future is secure." But I wasn't happy at all.
Louis's family, the Warners, had a lot of bad rumors because of their influence locally. Arrogant, quick to fire employees they didn't like, secretly dating several pretty female employees. How much of it was true, I, a recent high school graduate, couldn't tell. But where there's smoke, there's fire. There must be some truth to the issues they faced. Louis's approach was persistent, no, passionate, and he often waited in his car outside my workplace until I finished work. He gave me bouquets, treated me to dinners at fancy restaurants, various ways of showing his affection. However, as I talked more with Lewis, I started to think. Despite all the rumors about his family, maybe he's a serious and good person? So, I started dating him, and eventually, we got married. Right after our marriage, my in-laws gifted us a house. They said it was a wedding present. I was used to more modest wedding gifts, so it surprised me. Lewis accepted it as if it were normal. I realized then that we lived in different worlds. I never imagined that this house would turn out to be akin to a devil's dwelling. After moving in with Lewis, his mother, Catherine, started visiting our home frequently. Mostly without a specific reason, I just had to listen to her complaints about my father-in-law, Hector, all day. Apparently, Catherine had many issues with Hector. He doesn't pay attention to her, isn't grateful, even the argument they had 10 years ago. There's no end to Catherine's unpleasant stories. Not only about Hector but also about the family driver's way of speaking, the attitude of the company secretary, even the neighbor's clothing. She found something to complain about in everything. It was stressful having to listen to these stories every time.
Even it would be still acceptable if you're helping with a family business. It's a disgrace to work outside as a Warner family daughter-in-law.
As she said so, I had quit my job at the department store after getting married, so I had no way to avoid her frequent visits. Initially, she visited mostly on weekdays when Lewis was away, but gradually she started coming over on weekends too. That probably wasn't good. Even though we were newlyweds, Lewis began spending more time away from home. Catherine doted on him. Regarding our marriage, she had said,
"I wouldn't have allowed it if she wasn't a woman I approved of."
And there were quite strict conditions for a marriage partner. I wasn't highly educated, from a good family, or skilled in household chores as she wanted, but my ordinary face and knowing my place were preferred. A son's wife shouldn't be opinionated, always walk behind the men of the Warner family, it seems. Perhaps because I wasn't too flashy, my ordinary face was favored. My demeanor. I was just scared to speak with someone from a powerful family, but they took it as knowing my place. Thanks to that, now I can't say, "Catherine, I've heard this complaint from you before." Half a year into the marriage, Lewis hardly came home, and I started to wonder if I married him or Catherine. Then, his affair was discovered. One night, when he returned home in a company car, I accidentally witnessed from the window him kissing a woman in the back seat before parting ways. The driver didn't seem particularly flustered. As soon as they finished their exchange, the driver smoothly drove off, as if accustomed to their affairs.
"Hey! What was that just now?"
Naturally, I confronted Lewis, who entered the house with a calm face. I couldn't forgive infidelity less than a year into our marriage, especially after such a passionate pursuit before marriage. However, his reaction was completely different from what I expected.
"Don't make a fuss over one or two women.
Instead, prepare dinner." I was speechless at his attitude, untying his tie and heading to the living room. He wasn't even trying to hide it, but rather being defiant.
"Wait. Explain. Who was that woman?"
"You're noisy."
"She's a woman from the company."
"A new employee, I'm just looking after her."
"You're a high-ranking official. You're not in a position to look after new employees. What kind of care are you providing?"
"Enough, I'm tired." "Be quiet." With that, he forcefully shook off my hand. I was pushed hard on the shoulder and fell to the floor. Calm down." "I'm displeased, I'm taking a shower." Leaving me with a cold gaze, he really went to take a shower. The sound of the shower echoing in the room felt emptily surreal, and I deeply regretted marrying such a person. The next day, Catherine, as usual, came to our house and spoke to me in a clearly bad mood. "Carolina, sit down there." "What?" Confused, I was forcibly pushed to the floor by the secretary who entered the room with her.
"What is this about?"
"You yelled at Lewis yesterday, who was tired from work, didn't you?"
"Is that what a wife does?" "How do you know that?" "But that's because I saw him kissing a woman in front of the house. It's natural to ask what that was about."
"I was told by him to warn you." "Honestly." As a Warner family woman, you should turn a blind eye to one or two outside women.
Are you saying I should tolerate infidelity and pretend not to see it?
Great men in the past had many women. That's what it means to have power. I can't accept this. This family is really strange.
That's it. I'm divorcing Louis.
Saying it out loud made me tear up for the first time. Despite everything, I did love Louis. I never imagined choosing to leave him in such a manner on our wedding day, but
there's no way I'll allow that. What nonsense are you talking about?
I involuntarily shrank back at Catherine's furious demeanor. After a heavy sigh, Catherine took out her mobile phone and made a call to somewhere. Hi, yes, sorry Hector. Could you come home for a moment? Is it okay now? Yes, understood. As soon as she hung up the phone, she glared at me and said, "We're going to our house." Despite my resistance, I was forcibly dragged by the secretary, put in a car, and taken to my in-laws' house. Or more precisely, to the barn of my in-laws' house. Shortly after our arrival, Hector, father-in-law, also appeared. It seems he was the one Catherine had called earlier. "Carolina, you said you wanted a divorce?" Hector sneered at me. "Yes. I'm sorry, but that's not acceptable. We can't have a scandal of a Warner family man being left by his wife."
"I don't care about that.
Just as I tried to argue back, he grabbed my hair. "Listen, what I and Louis say is absolute. You have no right to refuse. Understand that until you calm down." Saying this, he roughly let go of my hair, and I staggered backward. "Let's go," Hector commanded. "Just do your duty." Catherine left these words behind and walked out of the barn with Hector. Hearing the sound of the key, I realized I was locked in. Panicking, I banged on the door and screamed to be let out, but someone who seemed to be the secretary said through the door, "I'm afraid that's not possible," and then ignored me completely. 12 hours later, locked in the hot and humid barn, I was on the verge of dehydration when I was finally released. Exhausted, Catherine asked me, "Have you calmed down?" and handed me a bottle of water. Drinking the water hastily made me feel sick, and I was too exhausted to think. Far from calming down, I couldn't think of anything. Led by Catherine into the house, I saw Louis and a woman next to him. "Have you reflected?" "Carolina, I'm willing to forgive you if you have. I still like you." Seeing his smiling face made my spine chill. "No, I can't have a conversation with this person. And, starting today, this lady will live with us too. This is Lisa. Get along." Looking at the woman, I vaguely remembered the scene. This woman was the one he was kissing.
"What are you thinking? Why do I have to live with your affair partner?"
Hey, are you saying you have a problem with that?"
"Of course I do. This is weird, this house is wrong, not just you, Catherine and Hector too, everyone."
The atmosphere in the room froze with my words. But I didn't think I was wrong at all.
"How dare you? To disrespect not just Louis but Hector too."
Catherine's anger was calmed by Louis saying, "It's okay. You said you wanted a divorce? Do you know what will happen to you and your family if you divorce?" His cold gaze met my defiant stare.
"I'll take you up on that, let's get divorced."
"Fine, but I won't pay any alimony in a divorce trial, you know? You don't work, so you must not have any money. Are you okay with that?" Louis smiled creepily. He thinks threatening me with money will make me return. It must have always been like this.
"Even so, please divorce me."
As I answered, Louis sighed and instructed Lisa. "Take the paper in the back right of that drawer." Lisa stood up, took a paper from the drawer as instructed, and handed it to him. "Here. Dad said to threaten women with this when necessary. My part is already filled out. Use it as you like." The paper handed to me was a signed divorce application, just as he said. "Good, I'll proceed with this immediately and cut ties with this house. If you regret it, it's not my problem," he said, to which I replied firmly, I won't regret it, I'm sure. Dragging my weakened body, I headed to the courthouse. Wait.
With such a dirty look, even if you're pretending to be someone else, if a woman from the Warner family is seen walking outside at night, it'll be a shame, so use our car.
I'll provide a driver for you. Hector's words made me visibly frown. Are they planning to lock me in the car and take me somewhere? Then, at that moment, the secretary, Casey,
I'll do it,
raised her hand to volunteer. She had been accompanying me on shopping trips ever since I got married. He then ordered Casey. Then you go. Trusting Casey, I got into the car and submitted the divorce papers. 2 weeks later, I received an unexpected call from Louis. The first thing, he shouted.
Don't mess around.
What's the matter? All of a sudden.
Don't play dumb. You're the culprit. Because of you, we're losing business partners. What are you going to do about it?
That's exactly what I wanted. I'm glad to hear that. Irritated by my laughter.
I'll destroy your family's home,
shouted Louis. Actually, when I submitted the divorce papers. Please use this. Casey handed me a pen in the car. Inside it was footage of me being lectured by Catherine about Louis's infidelity, being forcibly taken to the car by a male secretary, and then locked in the barn. It also included the moment Louis said he wanted to live with his mistress. Casey's sister was almost forced to become Hector's mistress and was fired from the group company when she refused. Casey and her sister had different last names due to their parents' divorce, so no one realized they were sisters. She had been waiting for a chance for revenge. Always carrying a pen-shaped mini-camera in her breast pocket just in case. Your treatment by Carolina was too harsh. I like you because you're kind and always thank the secretary. This should keep your family safe. Feel free to use it as you wish. Please take it with you, she said, entrusting me with the data. With this perfect material, I contacted a friend who worked at a publishing house to expose the reality of that house. I had planned to do this after the divorce anyway, but I was thankful to have evidence of the terrible treatment I received. I sold the data to a magazine, and the ruthless reality of the family was spread not only in magazines and newspapers but also on social media. Considering they were a family that had produced a member of parliament, even though they weren't a major corporate representative, the scandalous nature of the story attracted public attention as expected.
Basically, you, exposing Dad and Mom's affair, what do you want to do?
I'm exposing all the misdeeds of your family. If there's any power left in your family, I would have been completely destroyed along with my family, right? I just took up arms to protect my family. Got a problem with that? I had heard from Catherine's complaints every day that she actually has a lover. Initially, it started with Hector's infidelity, and as revenge, Catherine also cheated. Catherine, at 68 years old, had a lover in his 20s. She was quite smitten, apparently showering him with gifts. Catherine said, "If it weren't for the ties to this house, we would have been married long ago." But frankly, to the lover, Catherine was probably just a wallet. Catherine's history of affairs wasn't just with this man, apparently, there were many others in the past. While she claimed it was revenge against Hector, Catherine seemed to enjoy it just as much. It was mutual.
Because of you, Dad is even saying he'll divorce Mom. It's your fault.
I thought Warner family members weren't allowed to divorce. If your dad can't endure it anymore and easily changes his opinion, that's pretty small-minded.
Shut up. The person who caused this shouldn't be acting so high and mighty.
The cause, don't make me laugh. It's your parents who messed up with their constant affairs, and you for cheating, leading to our divorce.
What will you do if this house falls apart? I'm the only one inheriting this house and company. If it continues like this, everything. I'll lose everything.
Louis's voice gradually turned to tears. It's his fault, so I wish he wouldn't cry so pathetically. Duh. If you care so much about your family and company, why not just pull yourself together and rebuild them if they collapse? Don't you have any thoughts of starting over? It's unattractive to be unable to do anything unless you're at an advantage from the start.
Shut up. A commoner like you couldn't possibly understand what it feels like for me, who has been burdened with the expectations of being an heir since childhood, to have my promised future taken away.
Do you really think you were the only one expected to be an heir?
Of course.
Well, yes, you're the only decent son.
What do you mean? I'm an only child, you know that.
No, you have an older half-brother with a different father.
What? Don't lie. What are you talking about?
After our divorce, I hired a private detective who was an acquaintance of my parents. Your family is so well known that I didn't even need a detective to find all sorts of information.
An older brother for me? Don't joke. I've never heard such a thing.
As he was infuriated, I patiently explained to him about the existence of his brother. But it's true. Your family's former housekeeper, Joanne, you know her, right? Hector had a child with her. He was speechless at my words. Joanne, she. He was clearly interested in the familiar name I mentioned over the phone. Well, he never acknowledged the child legally because my legal wife doesn't have children yet. Catherine, who was newly married at the time, was very against it. Catherine had you, but Hector preferred Joanne's child, whom he had first. He even told people he wanted that child to inherit the family business. Eventually, that didn't happen, and reluctantly you were born as the heir. Your family is like a drama, really. At this point, Louis whispered, "That can't be true," in a small voice. But unlike before, his tone conveyed that he didn't think my story was false. Now, here's the question.
Huh?
Louis reacted with an obviously displeased voice when I suddenly started joking. Who really carries the blood of the Warner family?
What do you mean?
You are the child of Catherine's affair.
What?
When she found out about Joanne's pregnancy, she got back at Hector by getting pregnant with a man who was a driver at the time. That child was you.
That's impossible.
It's true, Hector didn't notice, but my investigation found people who knew about Catherine and your real father at the time.
No. That's a lie. I'm the only heir to this house. Otherwise, what was all my effort for?
Louis wailed like a child throwing a tantrum. That's why the real heir is Joanne's child. Not a drop of Hector's blood in you. If you doubt it, do a DNA test yourself. Well, it will be interesting to see what you, a stranger by blood, will do with that irredeemable house from now on. Good luck, bye-bye. I couldn't hide my smile as I cheerfully said goodbye to him and hung up the phone. Louis must have been shocked, he stayed silent. Then, my leak sparked other magazines to talk about Louis's family scandal. It was revealed that Louis was not of the Warner blood, Hector's tax evasion, and Catherine's verbal abuse to the driver. My plan worked faster than I thought. Louis's family fell into decline, closing all their businesses. Locally known as the no-good family, they fled the town and dispersed, now living modestly. While the relatives live modestly, Louis struggles to find a job due to his widespread exposure in magazines. He tried to command his former subordinates to find him work, but no one listens to a powerless Louis. His actions ended up in magazines, leaving him unemployed. Hector and Catherine divorced, entangled in disputes over alimony from the divorce. It was an ugly family till the end. As for me, I asked to be rehired at the department store where I worked before marriage. After that, I focused on my career, advancing smoothly. When I reached a certain age, I attended a middle school reunion and met a classmate attending for the first time in his 40s. He was not good at socializing and a man of few words. But his unpretentiousness was exactly what I found appealing and trustworthy. Thanks to that, my second marriage is going very well. The first marriage was full of struggles, but because of that, I learned to be discerning. Being single for a while allowed me to meet my current husband. In a way, my life hasn't been a waste. I even feel a little grateful to Louis. That's how I feel now.